Greetings, dear citizens. Welcome to a conversation between two great thinkers and tinkers. Kinda cute, huh? Benjamin Banneker and Thomas Jefferson. I am your moderator for today's conversation, and I will start with some biographical information on Benjamin Banneker, who stands tall as America's first black man of science, astronomer, and inventor.
Hello world, my name is Benjamin Banneker.
Benjamin was taught to read by his grandmother, Molly Welsh, a milkmaid who arrived in America from England in 1683 and worked as an indentured servant. Molly married an African prince named Banneker around 1690. They had 4 daughters, one of whom was Mary, who married Robert. In 1731, Mary and Robert's son, Benjamin, was born.
My mother Mary was born a free mulatto daughter of an English milkmaid and an African prince. My father was born in Guyana, West Africa, and as a young boy he was kidnapped into slavery and robbed of his name. When he met my mother, he was determined to purchase his freedom before they were married. He managed to do this, but he had no name, so he decided to take my mother's name, which he knew had come from my grandfather, who was indeed a real African prince named Banneker.
Here is Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, 3rd President of the United States, Governor of Virginia, founder of the University of Virginia.
And don't forget slaveholder.
What is quite clear is that the institution of slavery is an imperfect system.
Mr. Jefferson, you have made some remarks to which I take offense. We have long been considered rather as brutish than human and hardly capable of mental endowments.
Banneker, reacting to insulting comments Jefferson had made about blacks, sent a copy of his first almanac along with a 12-page letter to Jefferson.
Sir, I hope that you are a man far less inflexible in sentiments of this nature than many others. I apprehend that your sentiments are concurrent with mine, which are that our universal Father hath given being to all. How pitiful it is to reflect that, although you were so fully convinced of the benevolence of the Father of mankind, that you should, at the same time, cataract his mercies in detaining by fraud and violence so numerous a part of my brethren under groaning captivity and cruel oppression.
What did he just say?
I must say, Mr. Banneker offers a strong and intelligent defense of his oppressed race.
A few weeks later, Jefferson wrote back, and Banneker, within a few more weeks, answered with a second letter, to which Jefferson also responded. So I guess one could say they were pen pals.
When the tyranny of the British Crown was exerted to reduce you to servitude, your abhorrence was so excited that you publicly held forth this true and invaluable document.
We hold these truths to be self-evident,
that
all men are created equal,
and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Declaration of Independence, right?
Back to Mr. Banneker's letter. This almanac is a production of my arduous study. I have long had unbounded desires to become acquainted with the secrets of nature, and I have had to gratify my curiosity herein through my own assiduous application to astronomical study.
I need not recount to you the many difficulties and disadvantages I have had to encounter.
Back in those days, there was no post office, no FedEx, nor UPS. Oftentimes, delivering the mail was a job for a paid messenger or slave.
Sir, nobody wishes more than I do to see such proofs as you exhibit that nature has given to our black brethren talents equal to those of other colors of men, and that the appearance of want of them is owing only to the degraded condition of their existence, both in Africa and America.
Okay, time for another translation moment. Sounds like old Tom here is conceding that it might be a little hard for anybody locked down in slavery to improve their lives. Duh.
Mr. Jefferson continues, I can add with truth that no one wishes more ardently to see a good system commenced for raising the condition of both their body and mind to what it ought to be, as fast as the imbecility of their present existence and other circumstances, which cannot be neglected, will admit.
Okay, I'm catching on here. What Jefferson just said with that sweet little line is that although he would like to see slavery ended, it's not something that can be rushed, because as far as he's concerned, there are other things more important than some slaves' freedom.
To be more accurate, my greater concern is that if the slaves were to be set free, they would not be able to forgive their enslavers for past wrongdoings.
So, what is your opinion of the almanac compiled by my research?
I have taken the liberty of sending your almanac to Monsieur de Condorcet, Secretary of the Academy of Sciences in Paris and a member of the Philanthropic Society.
Bully for you, Thomas.
Because I consider it as a document to which your whole color had a right, for their justification against the doubts which have been entertained of them. Your most obedient, humble service, Thomas Jefferson.
Come on, fellows, it's time to rumble. Fight, fight, fight. Or should I say duel, duel, duel.
Thank you for your generous response, Mr. Jefferson.
Ben, what are you thanking him for? Remember how he insulted you, your family, and friends, talking about a lack of intelligence and making comparisons to lower animals?
Mr. Banneker, I was most impressed with your almanac. It compares quite favorably with those published by my dear colleague and your twin in name and many pursuits, Mr. Benjamin Franklin.
Sir, you flatter me.
Oh, geez, next they'll be dancing.
I see your reputation as being a humble man is true.
Humble and honest is my hope, sir.
Dare I say, I'm certain you enjoyed much success in gaining your purpose, dear sir.
Yes, allow me to share my story of how I was one among the multitudes in that beautiful Quaker town of Philadelphia in July of 1776.
A momentous and joyous occasion, was it not, Mr. Banneker?
At the time, I believe so. And so inspired, I returned home, determined to defeat our oppressors.
But they fooled you, didn't they, Ben, old man?
Yes.
Your loyalty and defense of our United States of America is deeply appreciated, kind sir.
Your declaration promises a life without oppression for all free men. I am a free man born of free parents, and yet I am denied this basic right, guaranteed by this most treasured document known to civilized man.
Here we go, time to get down to the nitty-gritty.
Mr. Banneker, the document to which you refer has no authority on such guarantees. Such guarantees are honored by the Constitution, and it allows the Congress to make laws.
Again, let me repeat. I am a free man born in this country of free parents, and yet I am denied what you and your cohorts have acknowledged to be the inalienable rights of all men. Why is this so, Mr. Jefferson?
Sir, it is an imperfect system.
Sir, you play me for a fool.
You tell him, Ben.
That is not my intention, Mr. Banneker. Please accept my apology if I've made an affront.
Oh, come on, Tommy boy. I know you can do better than that.
Southern plantation owners like yourself are not interested in equality and fairness for all. Why you even went so far as to define slaves as only 3/5 human.
Mr. Banneker, I protested the decision to define slaves as being only 3/5 human.
Somebody give the man a cookie.
It is an immoral and criminal system that will never be sanctioned by God.
As I have said, it is an imperfect system.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Your words, Mr. Jefferson, they offer the vision of a perfect system.
He got you on that one, TJ.
Would that we might have our utopian dreams and not the reality of our harsh lives, Mr. Banneker.
When I heard word of how the Liberty Bell cracked, I saw God's touch in that.
Mr. Banneker, when I wrote the Declaration of Independence, those ideals represented a hope to which we must all dedicate ourselves.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
Mr. Jefferson, I am a man of science. It is impossible for me to support that which I do not believe to be true.
I am also a man of science.
You dabble, sir.
I beg your pardon, sir?
True scientists are visionaries and would never be content to simply say it is an imperfect system. A true scientist could never condone the wrongness and immorality of allowing any American to be saddled by the tyranny and oppression.
Excuse me, moderator?
Oh, who, me? Oh, I didn't think you guys realized I was here. What can I do for you, Mr. J?
Yes, I don't mean to be difficult. However, I was under the impression that Mr. Banneker and I were asked to do this lecture together so that we might share some of his and my scientific ideas and discoveries.
Yep, that's what's here on the schedule. Benjamin Banneker and Thomas Jefferson, two great American thinkers and tinkers. I love that tagline, two great American thinkers and tinkers.
My point is this. I agreed to be here today before this audience to share my scientific ideas and discoveries.
You already said that.
Exactly. We are here to discuss science. However, Mr. Banneker appears not to be in the frame of mind for such intellectual pursuits.
Sir, I will not be insulted by the likes of your kind.
Moderator, might you help us get back to the previously agreed upon agenda?
Moderator, perhaps you might ask Mr. Jefferson why he is so reluctant to discuss the important principles on which this country is founded.
Mr. Banneker, the audience deserves to know more about your great life. We would be remiss if we did not share your shining example to those who would gain much from knowing about your accomplishments.
As for my accomplishments, I hope to serve as an inspiration to those who believe in the immense potential of the great states which have united under one flag.
Mr. Jefferson, your life has been documented down to the most intimate details. Our hope with this event is to increase awareness about Mr. Banneker. We are examining his relationship to you as a way of educating our audience about the diverse and thoughtful minds that influenced the establishment of these United States of America.
You honor me, dear moderator, and for that I am grateful. Still, at the end of this program, I should like to schedule another appointment with Mr. Jefferson to discuss what I feel are very pressing issues regarding the rights of all American citizens.
The next important person who helped Benjamin Banneker become a great scientist was a traveling salesman named Joseph Levi, who gave Benjamin a pocket watch.
Yes. For many weeks, I would take the watch apart and put it back together again, and take it apart and put it back together again. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Ever seen someone hooked on a video game? That was little Benjamin Banneker with his pocket watch.
Hidden among the stars in the cycle of season's majesty are eternity's secrets. Mr. Banneker, your almanac is quite full of similar information. Based on your meticulous calculations, you predicted the solar eclipse that took place as you alone said it would on the 14th day of April in the year 1789.
That pocket watch took me to a new place. Learning how its internal mechanisms worked, I built a wooden clock. Each part, no matter how small, had an important function in the task of accurately tracking time's unstoppable journey.
Your wooden clock was the first of its kind in America.
Yes, and many people saw it as an opportunity to see something new. And so I had many visitors who came in to see it and asked me questions about its construction.
Many years after I had traveled to France and had been president, I turned my attention to founding the University of Virginia and creating a home called Monticello as a place known for fine dining and intellectual conversation. In the pursuit to achieve this dream, I purchased a grandfather clock at great cost from a craftsman in Switzerland.
Although Jefferson died heavily in debt, he lived well.
Moderator, there are certain details which I prefer not be for public consumption.
Oh, my bad. I'm just reading what's written here, but I think we're okay now. Because it was an agrarian society, lots of people were farmers and grew their own food, meaning most people ate lots of good, fresh vegetables.
This is quite true. I believe wholeheartedly that we are what we eat, and thus it is important to eat well.
And because he was a slaveholder, Thomas Jefferson's life was made extremely comfortable because he did not have to pay his slaves a salary.
Moderator, you're allowing personal opinion to dictate the level of this conversation.
Mr. Jefferson, you must take responsibility for bringing the moderator into these proceedings.
Why must I take responsibility?
Because you were the first one to talk to the moderator.
Oh, I see. I gave volume to a voice biased against my own self.
I love the way you guys talk. Smooth, very smooth. And in response to your statement, Mr. Jefferson, now that you've jump-started me, I will not be silenced. The goal is to give understanding of how great minds come to express their genius. Jefferson had all the advantages of birth, so his success is understandable.
Advantage of birth is no guarantee of success. A man must still possess many other fine qualities.
Benjamin Banneker was born free, but he was a black man in America.
The limitations placed upon me because I was born black in America were quite severe. As a free black, I exist between a rock and a hard place. And for my brothers and sisters born into slavery, there are no words to describe their purgatory.
It is still a struggle in 21st century America. Every day I face a mountain of obstacles simply for being black and female and not white and male. But change is definitely in the air.
I have observed that many slaves seem quite content with their lot.
Oh, Mr. Banneker, would you share with our audience more about your study of the stars?
When visitors came to see the clock, I also shared my views on farming, stargazing, and other pursuits. I correctly predicted the solar eclipse on April 14, 1789, when several of my distinguished scholars of the day disagreed with my prognostications. With that experience of standing alone, I decided to publish an almanac that would include all the scientific information I could find. Abolitionist essays, recipes, medical remedies, poems, they are all within those pages.
It is a very impressive work. I have examined it thoroughly and felt compelled to share it with my French and English acquaintances. I trust you are in agreement with that action.
Quite so, sir. You may have noticed that I have placed a likeness of myself on the almanac's cover, for I knew that proof would be required to attribute its origin to a black man.
In 1792, Benjamin Banneker published the first of a series of almanacs that appeared until 1802. For those who do not know, an almanac is a book full of information that helps farmers decide what to plant and when. Banneker's almanac also included tidal information on the Chesapeake Bay and weather data.
Hello everyone, I'm Nisha Witt. There's no doubt that Hampton Roads is one of the most beautiful and historic lands in the United States. However, we are also losing these very same beautiful historic lands to sinking. Hampton Roads is one of the second most vulnerable areas to flooding, New Orleans being the first. Due to excessive carbon emissions, increasing global temperatures, we are losing this area to climate change. Nationally recognized venues such as Fort Monroe and Colonial Williamsburg will cease to exist if we fail to take action.
This is very important information for all of us. As for a scientific approach to farming, it is essential. One must properly rotate crops and look ahead while experimenting with new and exciting breakthroughs.
In this series, I also included information that I felt was important to establish our country as the most democratic in the world. Moderator, would you please share some of what I suggest?
There are 7 points here. Let us start with this.
Rather than a Secretary of War, let a Secretary of Peace be appointed to preside in this office.
We have fought long and hard against the English. We may be fighting Barbary wars to protect shipping. England may try to destroy us again.
Okay, the next point is to let a power be given to the Secretary of Peace to establish and maintain free schools in every city, every village, and every township in the United States.
Education is essential, but whether it is to be provided freely is a question to be answered by each individual state. New York cannot tell Virginia what to do, nor should it want to do so.
Number 3, let every family in the United States be furnished at public expense by the Secretary with a copy of the American edition of the Bible.
Separation of church and state is essential to the growth of this land. That point should not be for debate.
So you would disagree with my 4th point. To let the following sentence be inscribed in letters of gold over every door in every home in the United States. The Son of Man came into the world not to destroy men's lives, but to save them.
Sir, your religious beliefs are your own. This should be for each and every individual, with no interference from the government.
Mr. Banneker's 5th point is this: to inspire a veneration for human life and the horror of shedding human blood, let all those laws be repealed which authorize juries, judges, sheriffs, or hangmen to assume the resentments of individuals and to commit murder in cold blood in any case whatsoever.
Again, I question the federal government's right to make determinations that rightfully belong to the states.
With all of your objections, Mr. Jefferson, I wonder if you really believe a government is needed at all.
Mr. Banneker's 6th point is to subdue a passion for which education, added to human depravity, has made universal. A familiarity with the instruments of death, as well as all military shows, should be carefully avoided. Military dress and military titles laid aside.
A noble idea, Mr. Banneker, but quite impractical in this world in which we live. Now is not the time to give flight to doves.
And finally, let a large room adjoining the Federal Hall be appointed for transacting business and preserving the records of this office. Over the doors of this room let there be a sign on which the figures of a lamb, a dove, and an olive branch should be painted, together with the following inscription in letters of gold. Peace on earth and goodwill to man. Ah, why will men forget that they are brethren?
Sir, your heart is noble, but naive in the matters of government.
And if you believe this country can be the greatest in the world, while some of its citizens are enslaved and denied what is just, then you too carry the same cross of innocence.
In 1789, Jefferson was President George Washington's Secretary of State. And in this role, Jefferson was instructed to pull together a team of surveyors and architects to design the U.S. Capitol, which is known today as Washington, D.C. To the surprise of many, Jefferson appointed Banneker to the team.
None was more surprised than I.
Mr. Banneker, many call me a dreamer. I confess to that, and also to that of being a realist. In this imperfect system, much is lost, but I am here now to learn what I did not know in life.
Your response to my letter suggests that this is true.
The pursuit of truth is our greatest weapon against tyranny and oppression.
The pursuit of truth is our greatest gift to the betterment and the strength of mankind.
Let us arrange to meet again. There is much we need to discuss.
You are right on that score, sir. And it would be my pleasure to meet with you again in the very near future.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good day, fellow citizens, and to all who have joined us today for this conversation with Benjamin Banneker and Thomas Jefferson, two great American thinkers and tinkers.
And I'm the playwright and the director for this performance, and thank you very much for being here. Thomas Jefferson was a great statesman and a slaveholder. How do you feel about that contradiction? Any thoughts about that?
Conflicted.
Conflicted? It's difficult, isn't it? This was a couple hundred years ago. Our perception of slavery is different from what their perception was, obviously, right? And yet, we can only judge by what our own, kind of experiences and perspective on all of this. So there is a call today for a lot of things that are named after Jefferson to be renamed. Is that a good idea? Why not?
I don't think it's a good idea because that's historical stuff, and he did a lot of really good things, and it wouldn't help to rename all that stuff. And what would it be renamed to? I don't know that any great person that has things named for them is flawless, faultless, or really qualified to have anything named for them. Aside from that, I've never been to Monticello because I've never wanted even to go to a place where slaves were held. I really just didn't want to do it. And I also want to know why in Norfolk we call it Monticello Avenue, but we call it Monticello when we go there.
Right.
I should probably do it, and I probably will, but I just really, I'm not very interested. But I became a lot more ambivalent about it, maybe even a little bit more positive about it when I found out about Sally's family and the black descendants dealing with it so well.
Yeah, that's been a complicated relationship between the black descendants and the white descendants of Thomas Jefferson, and they are beginning to work together actually very much. There's a group called Coming to the Table that we work with, and they are working towards creating that harmony between those, or just kind of better understanding as a way of being a role model for the rest of the nation, because there are many blended families in America. That is one of the legacies of slavery, is that we are all related. So what do you think about the play's title, Ben and Jefferson? Disrespectful to Banneker?
Yeah. You're kind of attacking convention with Ben and Jefferson. If it had been Banneker and Jefferson, or if it had been Ben and Mr. Jefferson, Ben is the first name, slaves probably went by their first name, but you're not giving Mr. before Jefferson, so you're taking a slap at him. The name plays on those standards of way names are used, and it kind of attacks both.
Is it why?
Well, because if you just saw that as a standalone, you'd think about Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Because they're more peers, they're talked about together more often.
Okay.
So, it doesn't give me any idea who this man is.
Okay, all right.
And also, Thomas Jefferson, he's always referred to as Thomas Jefferson. Yet we just toss off Ben using his first name, as if we're all familiar with him, as if he doesn't deserve the
give it
the full salutation.
Yeah.
Well, I think it may kind of be a play on the fact that
slaves back then,
Uh-huh.
worked the property and ended up weren't really noted as having last names.
Right, that's true. That's very true. Well, I'll tell you, from a playwright's perspective, it was really a play on Ben and Jerry's. And with the thought of like going to see them become a sponsor or something like that. So it was all, nothing, artistic or creative, more just commercial capitalism there. So I confess to that, okay? But it's funny because when I came up with the title, I didn't think about that, but many times people would like get the script and they go, what's the title here, I want to make sure that it's always a part of the conversation because I think the discussion is necessary to know that. And I'd like to also point out a point that Bill here made for me that I really want to make sure that everybody knows this, and this is why these post-show conversations are so good. The tagline, where's Elijah? What's the tagline?
Thinkers and takers.
All right. Bill, would you explain to the audience why that's not what we want to say?
A tinker is somebody who works with tin and makes pots and pans and things like that. He cuts out the tin, he solders it together. I think the term that is intended here is tinkerer, Tinkerer, somebody who's always fiddling with things, changing them, trying to make them better, trying something else out. And that's what both of them were, tinkerers.
Tinkerers. Have you ever heard of Benjamin Banneker before today's performance? No. Okay. Never. Okay.
I went to Google and looked him up.
Uh-huh.
He had a 4-page history about him.
Right. Pretty extensive, biography for him, and yeah.
Sherry, I knew that there was a black man involved in the geography of and the establishment and all that stuff about making Washington D.C., but I thought it was L'Enfant.
He's French.
Oh. Right, exactly.
Well, it still could have been black.
True.
But I thought that was the black guy, was him.
Yeah, if anybody knows anything, has ever heard of his name, they've heard about him because of being hired to be a part of that team of surveyors there. Yes. Yeah, I'm fascinated by folks who vaguely have heard of Banneker because that is one of the reasons, again, why we want to do this work. Because the way of the history, American history is taught, it leaves out a lot.
In the past few years, there's been a tremendous emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Yes. To try to boost us back up.
Right. I mean, what do you think about the fact that we're the only country that doesn't use the metric system? What does that say about us? Yes, Elijah.
It kind of annoys me at school. Because sometimes when they, when we're doing math, they say use a ruler, and then we all like, are we supposed to use the metric system or the other system?
What do you teach it though? I think our curriculum and science and across the board is really politicized, and I'm real concerned about that. There was a story to illustrate this point just yesterday that the advanced placement courses on history, American history, were being challenged by the right because the pioneers who tore up families and stole lands in the quest for the West showed the truth about murdering and massacring Indians, and now that is being revamped.
At school, I know because my dad, he does a lot of history, but I noticed that at school they kind of hide a lot of like the truths, like what she was saying, like even before that, when we first came to America, I know that they don't really say it. Thanksgiving's kind of nobody's really sure. The fact that the one that I believe the story is that the Pilgrims came over and they killed all the Indians. Killed all the Indians, and yeah, so they hide a lot of the troops. You're not really sure. So.
And again, Elijah, at this point, it has been politicized and it has been kind of a biased telling of stories. And so, again, another reason in terms of wanting to do these American history plays is that, particularly for you as one of the actors, you go do research now. and you go figure out and find out the truth of what the situation is. And so that's why it is really important, we want to have these diverse cast and crew members a part of telling the story and in creating diverse audiences as well. Because it is only when we, are able to share this information that we're able to progress. And you all very much for being here and participating in this conversation. Thank you very, very much.